He saved me a seat every Sunday night, but I did not realize he was saving me from the life I was quietly disappearing into. The first time I noticed him, it was 11:43 p.m., and the rain had turned the sidewalk outside Blue Moon Laundromat into a strip of black glass. I came in soaked through my thrift store jacket, one sneaker squeaking with every step, a heavy duffel bag of work shirts, and cheap towels digging a red line into my shoulder. The laundromat was almost empty, the way it always was that late, except for the vending machine humming near the door, the rows of dryers turning like sleepy orange moons, and the tattooed guy in the back corner who looked like he belonged anywhere but under flickering fluorescent lights. He sat beside dryer number 6, one long leg stretched out, black hoodie pulled over dark hair, pale hands resting around a paperback book he never seemed to finish. Ink climbed from his knuckles to his wrists, disappeared under his sleeves, and reappeared at the side of his neck like shadows that had learned to breathe. People noticed him, then quickly pretended they had not. I understood why. He had the stillness of someone who did not need to raise his voice to be heard. An alpha, my instincts whispered, even through the dull cotton fog of the scent blocker patched beneath my cuff. I kept my eyes down, because omegas like me survived by becoming background noise. I worked the late shift at a convenience store 6 blocks away, smiled at customers who never looked at my face, counted coupons twice to make rent, and spent Sunday nights washing the same 3 uniforms before another week swallowed me whole. I did not have room in my life for curiosity, especially not about a man who looked like trouble drawn in black ink. But that night, when I reached the row of plastic chairs near the window, I stopped. My chair was empty. The blue one in the corner, the only seat where the overhead light did not stab directly into your eyes, had a black hoodie folded across it like a reserved sign. I thought someone had forgotten it there, so I stood awkwardly with my duffel in both hands, unsure whether to move it. Then his voice came from behind the book, low and rough around the edges. "You're late." My breath caught. He did not look up right away, and somehow that made it stranger. Not hello, not can I help you, just you're late. As if my arrival had become part of the laundromat's weekly rhythm, like quarters dropping, water rushing, dryers buzzing at midnight. I should have ignored him. I should have chosen another seat. Instead, I stared at the hoodie, then at him, and managed to say, I didn't know anyone was keeping time. His eyes lifted then, gray-green and calm, the kind of eyes that made the rest of the room feel farther away. I wasn't, he said, just noticed. He took the hoodie from the chair and folded it over his own knee, leaving the seat open for me. Seats free. I sat because my legs were tired, because the rain was loud against the glass, because for once something in the world had been left open instead of taken away. For the next hour, we did not speak. I loaded my clothes, fed quarters into the machine, and watched my reflection tremble in the washer door. But every time the front bell jingled, every time another alpha walked in smelling like cologne and wet pavement, the tattooed guy shifted just enough that his body became a quiet wall between me and the room. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself strangers did small things all the time. But when I left that night, my laundry warm against my chest, I looked back through the rain-streaked window and saw him still sitting beside dryer number 6, watching the empty blue chair like it was something he had promised to protect. By the next Sunday, I had already convinced myself that I had imagined the whole thing. Exhaustion could do that to a person. So could loneliness. When you lived in a basement apartment with pipes that rattled all night and a window that showed only the shoes of strangers passing above you, it was easy for one small kindness to grow larger in memory than it had been in real life. All week, I told myself the tattooed alpha had probably forgotten me the second I walked out into the rain. I told myself he had only moved his hoodie because he was polite, not because he cared whether I stood or sat. Still, when my shift ended at 11:18 p.m., I found myself walking faster than usual, my laundry bag bouncing against my hip, my wrist pressed close to my side where the scent blocker hid beneath my sleeve. The city was cold enough to turn my breath white. Storefronts were dark, traffic lights swung over empty intersections, and the only place still glowing on the block was Blue Moon Laundromat, pale blue neon buzzing like a tired electric heartbeat. I paused outside the glass door longer than I should have. Through the fogged window, I saw dryer number 6 turning slowly. I saw the vending machine blinking. And then I saw the blue chair. Empty again. Waiting. This time there was no hoodie on it. There was a folded newspaper instead, weighed down by a roll of quarters. My chest tightened in a way that felt almost painful. Caleb Hayes, though I did not know his name yet, sat in the same corner with the same paperback open in one hand. He did not look up when the bell over the door gave its small, rusty chime. He only reached out, picked up the newspaper, and slid the quarters a few inches toward the edge of the chair. "Machine 3 is working better tonight," he said. "Machine 2 is eating coins." I stood there like an idiot, cold air still clinging to my jacket. "You tested them?" His eyes flicked up, steady and unreadable. I needed to wash clothes. It was such a simple answer that I almost believed it. Almost. I carried my bag to Machine 3 and tried not to let my hands shake as I sorted my uniforms, socks, and the one gray sweatshirt I wore on every day off because it was soft enough to feel like comfort. I was aware of him without looking directly at him, aware of the quiet scrape of a page turning, the faint scent of cedarwood and clean rain beneath the stronger smell of detergent, the way other customers entered, noticed him, and lowered their voices. For the second week in a row, no one took the chair beside me. No one leaned too close. No one asked why an Omega was out alone near midnight, because no one seemed to realize I was one. Or maybe they did, and the silent alpha in the corner made them decide it was. Not their business. I hated how much relief that gave me. I hated how my body, traitorous and tired, started to relax in a room where it had no reason to feel safe. The ritual continued without either of us naming it. I put my clothes in the washer. He read his book. I bought a bottle of water from the vending machine. He shifted his boot away so I could pass without brushing against him. When the washer buzzed, he stood before I did and tapped the top of dryer number 6. "This one runs hot," he said. "Faster. Do you work here or something?" I asked, trying to sound annoyed instead of grateful. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. "No, then why do you know so much about broken washing machines?" This time he looked at me for a little longer. Under the fluorescent lights, the tattoos on his hands looked less like warnings and more like stories written in a language I could not read. "Because some people come here tired," he said quietly. "And tired people should not have to fight machines too." I did not know what to say to that. Nobody had ever described my exhaustion like it mattered. Nobody had ever noticed it as anything other than weakness. So I turned away, shoved my wet clothes into dryer number 6, and pretended the warmth in my face came from the machine. When I sat down, the blue chair gave its familiar plastic creak beneath me. Caleb went back to his book, but something had changed. The silence between us no longer felt empty. It felt kept, protected, like a space on a crowded shelf where someone had moved their own things aside and made room for mine. I learned to disappear long before I learned how to fold a fitted sheet. At 14, when my first Omega scent appeared in the middle of gym class like a secret spilling into the air, my mother drove me 3 towns over to a clinic with frosted windows and paid for blockers we could not afford. She held my hand in the waiting room and told me the world was not cruel to everyone, just to people it thought it could own. After that, I became careful. I kept my sleeves low and my voice lower. I never stayed too long in crowded rooms. I never let an alpha stand between me and an exit. By 22, I was so practiced at being nobody that some days I looked in the mirror above my bathroom sink and barely recognized the pale, tired face staring back. My basement apartment was 800 square feet if you counted the closet, with peeling paint near the heater and a refrigerator that clicked like a clock counting down money I did not have. Every month, I sent $200 to my mother in Ohio for prescriptions, and every month, I told her I was eating fine, sleeping fine, doing fine, because the truth would have made her worry herself sicker. At the convenience store, I wore a name tag that said Ethan, but most customers called me Buddy, Kid, or Hey You. I stocked shelves, cleaned coffee spills, smiled through headaches, and changed the scent blocker on my wrist every 12 hours, even when the skin underneath turned raw from the adhesive. The cheap ones came in bulk packs from a website that promised reliable coverage for active urban lifestyles, which was a polished way of saying they worked until they did not. That was why Blue Moon Laundromat became more than a place to wash clothes. It was where I checked the edges of my disguise beneath the humming lights. It was where I sat with my sleeve pressed tight to my pulse and prayed nobody noticed the faint sweetness trying to escape beneath the chemical dullness. On the 3rd Sunday, I arrived with my laundry bag lighter than usual because I had worn the same work pants 3 days in a row to save detergent. The blue chair was waiting again, angled slightly away from the brightest light. This time, there was a paper cup on the seat beside it, steam curling from the little plastic lid. I froze at the doorway. Caleb sat by dryer number 6, his paperback open, one tattooed thumb resting along the spine. Without looking up, he said, "It is coffee." Still sealed. I should have said no. I should have told him I did not take drinks from strangers, especially alpha strangers with quiet voices and inked hands. Instead, I picked it up and felt the warmth seep into my cold fingers. The label on the side read small coffee, too. Sugars, cream. Exactly how I made it from the machine at work when I was trying to pretend sugar counted as dinner. "How did you know?" I asked. Caleb turned a page slowly. "You look like someone who forgets to eat." The words landed softer than they should have. I sat down, careful to leave one chair between us, and held the cup like it was something fragile. Around us, the washers churned, the dryers breathed heat, and rain tapped against the glass in a nervous rhythm. For a while, I let myself believe I was only a tired young man in a laundromat, not an omega hiding under worn-out chemicals, not a son lying to his mother, not a person one mistake away from being noticed by the wrong eyes. Then the edge of my blocker began to itch beneath my cuff, sharp and sudden. My heart stumbled. I pressed my sleeve down fast, but Caleb's gaze lifted from his book at the exact same moment. He did not move. He did not ask. He only looked at my wrist, then at the front door, where two loud alphas had just walked in shaking rain from their jackets. Caleb closed his book with one hand and shifted his chair half an inch closer to mine. It was barely anything. It was everything. The two alphas who came in from the rain brought the outside with them, cold air, wet asphalt, loud voices, and the sharp bite of expensive cologne sprayed over something rougher underneath. They were not doing anything wrong, not really. One laughed too loudly at his phone. The other shook water from his jacket onto the floor and complained about the dryers like the machines had personally offended him. Still, every nerve in my body pulled tight. My sleeve stayed pressed against my wrist, hiding the loose edge of the scent blocker, while my other hand tightened around the warm coffee until the paper cup bent slightly beneath my fingers. Caleb did not look at me. That was the strange part. He did not make a show of helping. He did not puff up, growl, or turn the room into a battlefield of alpha pride. He simply closed his book, set it face down on his knee, and became impossible to ignore. The air around him changed first. Not louder, not heavier, just steadier, like a door, quietly locking. The two men glanced toward our corner, saw him sitting there beneath the tired neon glow, and their laughter softened. One looked at the tattoos on Caleb's hands, then at the dark ink climbing the side of his throat, and quickly found interest in a washing machine across the room. I had seen that reaction before. Everyone at Blue Moon seemed to know something about him except me. The college girls who came on Wednesday nights whispered that he owned the tattoo studio on Mercer Street, the one with a 6-month waiting list and black curtains over the windows. The older man who washed hotel sheets said Caleb Hayes had once lived in Los Angeles and returned with more scars inside than outside. The cashier from the gas station said he never smiled, never dated, never let anyone touch his left arm. I pretended not to listen, but I collected the rumors the way lonely people collect proof that someone else is real. That night, sitting beside him with my failing blocker and my pulse beating too fast, I finally allowed myself to look. His hands were pale and strong, marked with fine black lines that looked less random the longer I studied them. A rose on one knuckle, a small crescent moon near his thumb, a row of tiny numbers along the inside of his wrist, neat as dates on a calendar. Higher up, where his sleeve had pushed back, I saw a wolf with its mouth sewn shut in black thread. The image made my chest ache in a way I did not understand. "You are staring," Caleb said. Heat rushed to my face. "Sorry. You apologize a lot. People usually want me to." His eyes moved to me then, and for 1 second the laundromat felt so quiet I could hear the soft click of the dryer buttons across the room. He did not say what I expected. He did not tell me I was safe. He did not tell me not to be scared. Instead, he looked at my wrist, where my fingers still held the blocker in place, and said, "You should replace that before you walk home." My stomach dropped. The words were gentle, but they opened a door I had spent years holding shut. He knew. Maybe he had known from the first night. Maybe the chair, the quarters, the coffee. The careful way he stood between me and every passing stranger had never been random kindness at all. I pulled my sleeve lower, humiliation prickling behind my eyes. I am not looking for trouble. Caleb's gaze did not waver. I know. Then why do you keep noticing me? The question came out smaller than I wanted, stripped of every defense I had built around it. For the first time since I had met him, Caleb looked away. His thumb brushed over the row of numbers tattooed on his wrist, slow and absent, like touching an old bruise that no longer showed. When he spoke, his voice was almost too quiet to hear over the machines. Because the last time I ignored someone who looked scared, I regretted it for 5 years. I did not ask him what he meant. Part of me wanted to. Another part, the older and more frightened part, understood that some questions were doors, and once opened, they changed the shape of a room forever. So I looked away first and pretended to be busy with my laundry, even though my clothes still had 12 minutes left spinning behind the round glass door. The two alphas on the other side of the laundromat had settled near the vending machine, arguing over chips and laundry detergent like ordinary men with ordinary problems. Caleb stayed beside me, quiet as a shadow, his thumb resting over those tiny numbers on his wrist. 5 years, he had said. Regret had a date, then. A before and an after. I wondered what mine would be. Maybe the day my mother first bought me blockers. Maybe the night I signed a lease for a basement apartment because it was the only place that did not ask questions. Maybe this one, with rain sliding down the windows and a stranger seeing too much of me beneath fluorescent light. When the washer buzzed, I stood too quickly. My duffel slipped from the chair, spilling a sleeve of quarters across the floor. The sound cracked through the room, bright and embarrassing, coins rolling under chairs, beneath machines, toward the wet mat by the door. I dropped to my knees at once, heat burning my face. I have it, I muttered, reaching under the nearest washer. My fingers brushed dust, a lost sock, and 1 cold quarter. Behind me, a dryer. Door slammed shut, and one of the alphas near the vending machine laughed at something on his phone. It should not have mattered, but shame has a way of making every sound feel aimed at you. Then Caleb crouched beside me. Not too close. Not crowding. Just near enough that the cedarwood calm of him softened the sharp edge of panic in my chest. He picked up 3 quarters from beneath the plastic chair and placed them in my open palm without comment. Machine 4 is open, he said. It takes cards if you are short. I am not short, I said too fast. Another coin rolled past his boot and disappeared under dryer number 6. Caleb reached for it. I reached at the same time. Our hands met on the chipped tile, brief as a spark. My blocker chose that exact moment to fail. The edge peeled loose beneath my cuff with a tiny, traitorous pull, and the thin chemical cover I relied on every day split open like paper in rain. My real scent slipped into the air before I could stop it, soft and warm and unmistakably omega. Vanilla, sun-warmed cotton, and the clean ache of loneliness I had never known could have a fragrance. I froze. Caleb froze too, but not the way other alphas had frozen around me before. There was no hunger in his face, no victory, no ugly little smile of discovery. His expression changed into something quieter and far more devastating. Recognition. The 2 men by the vending machine turned their heads. My heart lurched so hard it hurt. Before I could move, Caleb rose and stepped in front of me, not touching me, not claiming space from me, only giving me space to breathe. He shrugged out of his black hoodie and held it low between us, his eyes staying on mine. Use this, he said. My hands shook as I took it. The fabric was heavy, warm from his body, and smelled like clean ink, cedarwood, and rain on concrete. I wrapped it around my wrist, covering the failed patch while my breathing came too thin and too fast. Why are you helping me? I whispered. Caleb looked toward the blue chair, then back at me. For a moment, the laundromat lights flickered, and the tattoos on his hands seemed to move with the shadows. Because you should not have to be scared just to wash your clothes, he said. The sentence was so simple that it nearly broke me. For a few seconds, I could not move. I stood there in the middle of Blue Moon Laundromat with Caleb's hoodie wrapped around my wrist, my clean clothes half in the washer and half in my arms, feeling as if the entire city had gone quiet just to hear whether I would fall apart. The 2 alphas near the vending machine looked away first. Not because Caleb threatened them. Not because he said a single word. They looked away because he stood between us with the calm certainty of a locked door, and some part of them understood that the space behind him was no longer open for inspection. My throat burned. I hated that I wanted to cry. I hated it more because Caleb did not make me feel weak for it. He simply bent down, picked up the last few quarters from the tile, and placed them beside my laundry basket. "Dryer 6, he said gently. "Still warm." His voice gave me something to hold on to. I nodded, although my hands were unsteady as I moved my clothes from the washer to the dryer. The hoodie sleeve kept slipping over my fingers, too big, too heavy, too much like being covered by a promise I had not asked for and did not know how to return. When the dryer started, a soft orange glow filled the round window, turning my spinning uniforms into shadows. I sat in the blue chair because my knees felt unreliable. Caleb did not sit right away. He walked to the vending machine, bought a bottle of water, and set it on the chair between us without opening it. "Drink when you can," he said. That was the thing about him. He never pushed. He never asked for my secrets like they belonged to him just because he had noticed them. He gave me space, and somehow that made the space between us feel more dangerous than any demand could have. I took the water and twisted the cap with both hands. "How long have you known?" I asked. Caleb lowered himself into the chair beside dryer number 6. The laundromat lights hummed above us. Outside, the rain had thinned to a silver mist clinging to the glass. "Since the first night," he said. My fingers tightened around the bottle. "And you did not say anything." It was not mine to say. I looked at him then, really looked, past the tattoos, past the quiet, past every rumor the neighborhood had built around his silence. Most alphas would not think that way. His jaw shifted slightly, as if the words had landed somewhere old. I know. For a while, there was only the dryer turning and the faint rattle of loose buttons inside. Then Caleb pushed back his left sleeve. The row of tiny numbers on his wrist was clearer now, 5 dates inked in black, each separated by a small mark shaped like a crescent moon. Above them was the wolf with its mouth sewn shut. He touched the first number with his thumb. "My younger brother was an Omega," he said. His name was Noah. The name changed him when he said it. His voice stayed steady, but something behind it dimmed, like a room where the lights had been turned off one by one. I did not speak. I was afraid any sound would make him close the door again. Caleb looked toward the blue chair, and suddenly I understood that he was not looking at plastic and metal. He was looking through years. "He used to sit there," he said, "every Thursday night. Same chair, same machine. He liked it because the light did not hurt his eyes." My heartbeat slowed into something heavy. The chair beneath me no longer felt ordinary. It felt borrowed. It felt sacred. Caleb folded his hands together, inked fingers locked so tightly his knuckles paled. "One night, I was supposed to meet him here. I was late." He stopped there, and even without the details, I felt the shape of what came after. Not violence. Not a story meant to frighten me. Just absence. A person expected in a warm seat, who never came home the same way again. Caleb looked back at me, his gray-green eyes quiet and raw. "So yes, Ethan. I noticed you. I noticed the way you checked the door. I noticed the way you kept your wrist covered. I noticed because someone should have noticed him sooner." The dryer buzzed, but neither of us moved. My laundry was done. The night should have been over. Instead, I sat there with Caleb's hoodie around my wrist and a stranger's. Grief between us. Realizing the seat he saved had never been just a seat. I should have gone home after Caleb told me about Noah. My laundry was dry, my shift started again in less than 9 hours, and the safe thing to do would have been to fold my uniforms, give back his hoodie, and let the night end before it became something I did not know how to carry. But I stayed. The blue chair creaked softly beneath me while the last dryer on the wall spun somebody else's sheets in a slow golden circle. Caleb did not look embarrassed by his confession, only tired in a way that made him seem younger for a moment, less like the silent man everyone avoided and more like someone who had spent 5 years standing guard over a memory. I held the hoodie around my wrist and said the only thing I could think to say. "Noah was lucky to have you." Caleb's eyes moved to mine. For a second, I thought I had said the wrong thing. Then his mouth softened, barely, painfully. I was supposed to be lucky enough to keep him. The words settled between us, heavy but not hopeless. I understood then that Caleb did not want pity. He did not want me to make his grief pretty. So I did not. I only reached into my laundry bag, took out my old sketchbook from the side pocket, and opened it on my knees. I had carried it for months without drawing a single thing. The pages were warped from damp air, the corners bent, the cover stained with coffee from a morning when I had been too tired to care. Once, before rent and blockers and hospital bills had shrunk my life into survival, I had wanted to design book covers. I had loved lines, shadows, the shape of ordinary things made beautiful by attention. I did not know why I opened it that night. Maybe because Caleb had given me one truth, and I needed to give one back. I found a pencil stub and began to draw the blue chair. Not perfectly. My hand shook at first. The legs came out uneven. The back looked crooked. But slowly, the chair appeared on the page, plastic and worn and waiting beneath a halo of laundromat light. Caleb watched without speaking. When I added the folded hoodie across the seat, his breath changed. "You draw," he said. "I used to." "That does not look like used to." I almost smiled. It felt strange on my face, like trying on clothes from an older, braver version of myself. "It looks rusty." Rust means something survived the weather. I looked down quickly because that sentence reached too deep. After that night, the weeks changed. Not all at once. My life did not transform into something easy. The basement pipes still rattled. My paychecks still disappeared into rent, groceries, and money orders to Ohio. My wrists still carried the red outline of adhesive. But every Sunday, I walked to Blue Moon with a sketchbook beside my laundry. And every Sunday, Caleb saved the blue chair without making me feel like I owed him my trust faster than I could give it. Sometimes there was coffee. Sometimes there was a sealed pack of better scent blockers placed beside the roll of quarters. And when I tried to refuse, he only said, "Pay me back by using them." Sometimes we said nothing for an hour, and the quiet felt more honest than conversation. I drew the vending machine, the spinning dryers, the rain on the windows, Caleb's hands resting around his unfinished book. I never drew his face. Not because I could not, but because I was afraid that once I did, I would have to admit how carefully I had been looking. On the 7th Sunday after Noah's name entered the space between us, Caleb arrived with his left sleeve pushed up. There, beneath the dates and the silent wolf, was a fresh outline in black ink. A small blue chair, empty but no longer abandoned. I stared at it until my throat tightened. Caleb followed my gaze and said, "Some things deserve to be remembered differently." That was when I realized he was not the only one changing the meaning of the chair. Somewhere between the quarters, the coffee, and the quiet, I had stopped coming to the laundromat only to clean what the week had dirted. I was coming because a part of me had started to believe I could be kept safe without being owned, seen without being trapped, and noticed without being taken apart. The first Sunday in December came with a cold snap that made the whole city feel made of glass. The weather app on my phone said 29 degrees, but the wind between the buildings made it feel sharper, meaner, like it had teeth. I arrived at Blue Moon later than usual because the convenience store manager had asked me to stay an extra hour after the new cashier called out. And by the time I pushed through the laundromat door, my fingers were numb around the strap of my duffel bag. Caleb was already there. Of course he was. Dryer number 6 glowed behind him. His book rested unopened on his knee, and the blue chair waited beneath the softest patch of light with a roll of quarters on the seat. But something was wrong. I felt it before I understood it. A thin wire of tension stretched across the room. Caleb's eyes found mine the second I stepped inside, and he did not say I was late. He only looked at the far side of the laundromat, where a man in a brown coat stood pretending to read the instructions on a washing machine. I had seen him before. Not here, not exactly, but near the bus stop outside my apartment building, in the reflection of the convenience store window, half a block behind me when I walked home with groceries. I had told myself I was being paranoid because fear had lived in my body so long it had learned how to invent footsteps. But now he was here, too clean, too still, watching without looking like he was watching. My hand went to my wrist. The better blocker Caleb had given me was secure, but my pulse beat hard beneath it. Caleb stood slowly. The man in the brown coat turned his head, and for a moment the air carried a strange sour note of recognition, not strong enough to be a threat, but enough to make every instinct inside me go quiet and sharp. "Ethan," Caleb said, his voice low. Not a command. A question. A place to choose. The old version of me would have backed toward the door. The old version would have made himself smaller, apologized to the room for taking up space, and disappeared into the cold with wet laundry and shaking hands. But I looked at the blue chair. I looked at the little tattoo of it on Caleb's wrist, no longer empty, no longer only a memorial. I looked at the man who had saved space for me week after week and never once asked to own the part of me he protected. Then I walked past the chair. Caleb's eyes changed, just slightly, when I stopped beside him instead of behind him. The man in the brown coat shifted his weight. Caleb's shoulders squared, but I reached out first. My hand found his, warm and steady, inked fingers stilling beneath mine. The laundromat seemed to hold its breath. Caleb looked down at our joined hands, and I felt the smallest tremor pass through him, as if my choice had reached somewhere deeper than words. "I am okay," I said, though my voice shook. Then, because I needed the room to hear it, because I needed myself to hear it, I added, "I am with him." Caleb did not smile. He did not pull me closer or make a scene. He simply turned his hand under mine and held it like something precious, something offered freely. The man in the brown coat stared for one long second, then looked away. A minute later, the bell over the door rang, and he was gone into the winter dark. Only then did I realize I was breathing too fast. Caleb moved his thumb once over the back of my hand. "You did not have to do that," he said. I looked at the blue chair, still waiting, and for the first time, I did not want it. "I know," I whispered. "That is why I did." The bell over the door stopped trembling long before my hand stopped shaking. Caleb did not let go, and that was what kept me standing. Not because he held me tightly. He did not. His fingers rested around mine with the gentlest pressure, warm and steady, leaving me every chance to pull away. That choice, small as it looked from the outside, felt larger than the whole laundromat. The blue chair waited behind us, the roll of quarters still on its plastic seat, the dryers turning in their slow orange circles as if nothing important had happened. But everything had shifted. I had spent years believing safety meant hiding well enough that no one could find me. Caleb had taught me something quieter and harder to believe. Sometimes safety was being seen clearly and not being used for it. The next Sunday, I almost did not go. Not because I was afraid of Caleb, but because I was afraid of what I had become around him. Someone who walked a little taller, someone who checked his sketchbook before his blockers, someone who looked forward to midnight in a laundromat like it was the brightest hour of the week. Snow fell that evening, soft and stubborn, turning the sidewalks white and muffling the traffic on Mercer Street. By the time I reached Blue Moon, my sneakers were damp, my cheeks were numb, and my laundry bag felt lighter than usual. Through the fog window, I saw Caleb standing near dryer number 6. The blue chair was empty. No hoodie, no newspaper, no roll of quarters. Just the chair itself, clean and waiting beneath the pale neon light. For one strange second, fear flickered through me. Maybe the ritual was over. Maybe after what happened, Caleb had decided kindness had gone too far, that I had stepped too close to a grief that was never mine to touch. Then he looked up and opened the door before I could reach for it. Warm air rolled over me, carrying detergent, cedarwood, and the faint clean scent of ink. "You came," he said. I tried to smile, but my throat felt tight. "It is Sunday." His eyes softened. "That it is." I walked to the chair, set my laundry bag down, and then did something that would have been impossible for me 2 months earlier. I did not sit in it. I picked up my sketchbook, crossed the small space between us, and sat on the chair beside his instead. Caleb watched me quietly, like a man seeing a sunrise he had not expected to deserve. "I saved you a seat," he said. I looked at the empty blue chair, then back at him. "I know," I said, "but I do not want to sit alone anymore." For a moment, the words simply lived between us. No dramatic music, no grand confession, just washers humming, snow melting against the glass, and Caleb looking at me as if I had placed something breakable and priceless in his hands. Then his gaze dropped to my wrist. I followed it and saw what he saw. Just beneath the edge of my blocker, where the adhesive had loosened from the warmth of the room, a faint silver mark curved along my skin like a crescent moon drawn in light. I had seen marks like that only in medical pamphlets and old stories my mother pretended not to believe. A resonance mark. Rare. Quiet. The kind that appeared when an Omega's body recognized an Alpha not as a threat, not as an owner, but as home. My breath caught. Caleb went very still. He did not touch it. He did not reach for me. He only looked at the mark, then at his own wrist, where the tiny blue chair sat beneath the dates that once measured loss. His voice, when it came, was rough with wonder. "Ethan," he whispered, "do you know what you are to me?" I looked at the empty chair one last time, the chair that had carried grief, apology, protection, and finally promise. Then I turned my hand palm up between us, offering the answer before I found the courage to speak it. Caleb placed his hand in mine. Outside, the snow kept falling, softening every hard edge of the city. Inside, for the first time in years, I stopped waiting to be saved. I was already there,